The early afternoon light filtered through the expansive glass panels of my office in downtown Chicago, casting sharp reflections across the polished marble desk. I was reviewing the final interview lineup for the head of strategic marketing role at Luminate AI, and the first name on the list stopped me cold. Madeline Carter. My sister. Just 4 hours earlier, she had laughed at me during brunch at our parents' house in Lincoln Park. I'm Ava Carter, the younger sibling she's mockingly referred to as the family misstep for most of the last decade. At 32, I was the one who had left Yale's MBA program midway through to launch a tech idea that, in my family's words, was a pipe dream. What they didn't know was that the pipe dream had evolved into Luminate AI, one of the fastest-growing digital strategy firms in North America, now valued at $3,800,000,000, 0 cents. What they didn't know was that the shared loft I mentioned at family dinners was in fact my penthouse atop the same building that housed my company. They thought I was still trying to figure things out. They didn't know I'd already figured out everything and more. And in just 20 minutes, Madeline would walk into conference room 7B for the most pivotal job interview of her career. Clueless that the person she was about to pitch herself to was the same sister she'd spent years mocking. A message flashed on my screen. It was from Eli, my chief of staff. Moved Carter's interview to 7B. Entire exec panel briefed. Shall we begin the fireworks? Eli had seen it all. He'd helped build Luminate from my kitchen table to a global operation with teams in 5 countries. He'd watched me push through every snub, every family gathering where I was introduced as the one still doing tech stuff. I opened Madeline's CV. It was polished. MBA from Kellogg, a stint at BCG, then 3 years at a boutique brand consultancy. She had built a respectable resume, but it didn't compare to founding the firm she now dreamed of joining. The same firm she once said wouldn't last 6 months. The irony was exquisite. At Luminate AI, we didn't just market brands, we reshaped them using predictive AI and next-gen analytics. Our name opened doors. Today, mine was the only door she needed to walk through. And I would be sitting on the other side. Madeline had been trying to land an interview with us for almost 9 months. I remembered this morning's tension in our parents' kitchen in Lincoln Park. I had dropped by early to leave a gift for Dad's birthday, a signed first edition of his favorite political memoir. It had cost more than Madeline's rent, though I let them assume it came from a used bookstore downtown. "What are you doing here so early?" she asked, glancing at me in her sleek navy suit. It was clearly chosen for today's interview. "Don't you have a smoothie bar to run or something?" The smoothie bar? That was her latest guess. She'd noticed how often I worked from cafes around Chicago, always hunched over my laptop, always in jeans and sneakers. To her, that meant I was some kind of barista or freelancer with no direction. The idea that I might be leading a global tech firm from those same cafes never crossed her mind. "Just leaving Dad's gift," I said, placing the neatly wrapped package on the counter. "Right? Well, I hope you're not planning on sticking around. I've got the most important interview of my career today, and I don't need distractions." Distractions. That's what I was to her. Madeline turned fully to face me, her tone sharpening. "Ava, you're an embarrassment to this family. You're 32 with no real job, no assets, no future. I can't have anyone connecting me to that." Mom started to speak, but Madeline cut her off. "No, seriously. We've all been avoiding this conversation for too long. Ava dropped out of Yale. She lives in yoga pants, floats between gigs and acts like life is one long gap year." She leaned in closer, lowering her voice. "Today I'm interviewing with Luminate AI, the most competitive firm in the country. I cannot risk them seeing me next to someone who's clearly failed. Please, just stay invisible for once." I'd said nothing, only nodded. I didn't need to speak, because in a few hours she'd be seated across from me in conference room 7B, pitching herself for a job at the company I built. Back in my office, I scanned her application. The cover letter was bold. "Luminate AI represents the future I've worked for. Its innovation and excellence mirror my values." She wasn't wrong. It was her dream role. Too bad she had no idea who would be holding her future in their hands. She also had no idea that her directionless sister had specifically asked to be included on the interview panel when her application hit our HR system 2 months ago. There was a soft knock at my office door. "Miss Carter?" It was Lauren, my assistant. "The interview panel is assembled. Madeline Carter arrives in 15 minutes. "Perfect," I said, closing her resume folder on my desk. "Has everyone reviewed her background?" Lauren nodded, then paused, her lips twitching with amusement. "They have. And the team's a little curious why you're sitting in on this one yourself." I stood, straightening the collar of my dark slate blazer. "It's always important to personally meet potential family members." "Family members?" she asked, arching a brow. "Future corporate family," I replied smoothly. Her skeptical smile said she didn't buy it. Conference Room 7B was our crown jewel. Floor-to-ceiling views of the Chicago River, a 12-foot glass table, and wraparound displays projecting live campaign dashboards, click-through rates, brand lift metrics, and real-time sales spikes. My panel was already seated. Eli from Strategy, Naomi from Digital Innovation, and Terrence from Global Partnerships, 3 of the sharpest minds in marketing analytics, and none the type to be impressed easily. "Why this one?" Naomi asked as I pulled up a chair beside her. "You've never sat in on a director-level interview before." "Let's just say it's a special circumstance," I replied, tapping my tablet. "This one needs a personal touch." At exactly 2:00 p.m., Lauren's voice echoed through the intercom. "Mr. Carter has arrived." "Send her in," I said calmly. I positioned myself at the head of the table, back to the entrance, tablet in hand. My pulse quickened, not from anxiety, but the quiet thrill of symmetry. Years of being treated like a footnote in my own family's narrative were about to flip. "Miss Carter," Lauren's voice echoed again, "please come in. The panel is ready for you." I heard the telltale rhythm of Madeline's heels on the hardwood, then her voice, polished and precise, her tone honed from years of agency life. "Thank you so much for this opportunity. I'm Madeline Carter, and I'm absolutely thrilled to be here at Luminate AI." Naomi stood first. "Welcome, Madeline. I'm Naomi, head of digital. This is Eli from Strategy and Terrence from Partnerships. And..." Eli's grin widened as he said, "Our CEO wanted to personally conduct this interview." I turned slowly, giving her time to register what she was seeing. The recognition hit Madeline like a slap. Her confident smile twitched, stalled, and finally collapsed. All the color drained from her face. "Hello, Madeline," I said evenly, extending a hand. "Welcome to Luminate AI." Her hand barely lifted to meet mine. "I'm Ava Carter, Chief Executive Officer." The silence that followed was thick. Madeline's mouth opened as if to respond, but no words came out. The greeting she'd no doubt rehearsed all morning vanished. "Please, have a seat," I said, gesturing to the chair across from mine. "We're eager to learn about your experience and qualifications." She sank into the chair like her spine had vanished. Her eyes flicked around the room, taking in the 180-degree skyline view, the softly glowing dashboards showing our campaign KPIs, the executive panel seated around her. The atmosphere radiated power. I don't understand," she finally whispered. "What don't you understand?" I asked pleasantly. "If it's the interview process, I'd be happy to clarify." I smiled, cool and professional. "We'll discuss your experience, your perspective on evolving marketing strategies, and how you envision contributing to Luminate's continued global growth." Lee stepped in. "Your resume includes time at BCG and Polaris Strategy Group," he said. "Could you walk us through your most impactful campaign?" Madeline straightened slightly, trying to summon her poise. "Of course. At BCG, I led the brand overhaul for Avalon Mobility, resulting in a 34% increase in awareness and a 19% sales boost over Q1. "Impressive," said Naomi, her voice crisp. "What was the core of your strategy?" As Madeline explained the rebranding framework and target segmentation, I watched her closely. Her delivery was solid. She understood market positioning, she knew data storytelling, and she could command a room under normal conditions. But today was not normal. When she finished, I leaned in. That's a textbook approach. But at Luminate, we've moved far past textbook. Terrence, I said, show her the Thompson Interactive campaign. The screen behind him lit up with vibrant visuals and analytics. Live feedback loops, predictive AI targeting, micro-personalized ad delivery, engagement, 88%, conversion, 42.7%. Madeline blinked. Those metrics are unheard of. They're standard here, I said quietly. Her silence said everything. For once, she wasn't the one teaching someone else what excellence looked like. We don't do traditional marketing here, I said evenly. We apply behavioral science through proprietary AI systems. The real question is, can you think beyond what you learned at Kellogg? The challenge lingered in the air like static. Madeline glanced around the table, sensing that this interview had become much more than a formality. It was no longer just about a title or a salary. It was about whether she could reframe her entire professional mindset. I'd need a deeper understanding of your systems, she said cautiously. But yes, I believe I could learn and contribute. Learned from whom? I asked softly. The implication was unmistakable. If she got the job, her mentor, her superior, would be me. The sister she had dismissed, judged, and reduced to a cautionary tale at family dinners. She finally looked me in the eye. From you, I suppose. From me, I confirmed. The Yale dropout. The so-called disappointment. The woman with no direction, no savings, and no future. Around the table, my team exchanged curious glances, starting to grasp the subtext between us. Eli cleared his throat. Maybe we should walk through the role's core metrics? I shook my head and stood. Actually, let's pause for a moment. Madeline, would you mind stepping into the lounge? There are some case studies there I think you'll find relevant. She nodded and left without a word, the door clicking shut behind her. Once we were alone, Naomi turned to me. She's your sister. My sister, I said quietly. The same one who this morning told me I was an embarrassment to our family and that I should avoid successful people? Terrence let out a low whistle. Damn, that's rough. Is it? I replied, pulling up the internal analysis our data team had prepared. Take a look at her track record. Her campaign metrics scrolled across the screen. Above average engagement, clean execution, reliable ROI. She's good, I admitted. Really good. But, Eli prompted. But she spent the last 5 years treating me like a cautionary tale, never once asked what I'd actually been building. I stepped to the window, staring out at the buzz of Wacker Drive below. She made assumptions about me, clung to them, even when the truth was staring her in the face. What kind of truth? Naomi asked. I gave a small smile. I pay for Dad's cancer treatments. If you're just as curious as Madeline to find out what happens when the truth finally catches up, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the moment everything changes. I bought Mom a new car when hers gave out, I said quietly, and I've been paying Ethan's private school tuition for 2 years. Without telling Madeline? The room went still as the weight of that landed. She had benefited from my success while condemning me for supposedly having none. To what now? Eli asked. Do we hire her and make her report to the sister she's written off for half a decade? That's bound to get messy. Or, Terrence said, leaning back in his chair, we don't hire her. Let her leave here wondering forever what could have happened. I looked through the glass wall of the conference room. Madeline stood in the lobby, gazing at the display of Luminate's top awards. Forbes Innovator List, Inc. 500, Fast Company's Best Workplaces. She was taking it all in slowly, probably still trying to wrap her mind around the fact that her so-called failure of a sister had built all of this. There's a third option, I said finally. What's that? Naomi asked. She applied for Senior Director of Marketing, reporting to Naomi. Instead, we offer her something else, a role as Special Assistant to the CEO. She'd report directly to me. Eli gave a low whistle. That's either inspired or savage. Maybe both, I admitted. But here's the thing. She's qualified. And despite everything, she's still my sister. This could be a chance for both of us. To learn what exactly? Terrence asked. She could learn that success doesn't always look the way you expect, and that writing people off based on surface assumptions can cost you everything. And you? Naomi asked. I looked out again at Madeline. I could learn whether our relationship has a future, whether we can rebuild something now that the truth is finally in the open. Naomi nodded slowly. And if it doesn't work, then we both walk away knowing we tried. 20 minutes later, Madeline re-entered the room. Her stride was steadier, but I could see the tension in her eyes. Madeline, I began, after reviewing your background, would like to extend an offer. Her brows lifted, hope flickering. An offer? Not for the role you applied for, I clarified. We'd like to offer you a position as special assistant to the CEO, focused on cross-functional strategy and innovation. Her voice faltered. That would mean working directly with you? Yes, I said. It would. Every day? Madeline echoed, her voice quieter now. She looked around the room, then back at me. Can I ask, why? I leaned forward, locking eyes with her. Because you're talented. Your work at BCG and Polaris shows that. But you're also stuck in a framework that limits your potential. And you think working for you would change that? I think working with me could teach you things you won't learn in any traditional firm, I said, about innovation, about questioning assumptions, about the difference between success and the performance of it. The room stilled. Her face reflected everything. Conflicted pride, ambition, discomfort. A woman torn between proving herself and confronting what she'd misjudged. What's the compensation? She finally asked, her tone composed again. Eli slid a slim folder across the table. Details are all inside. I think you'll find it more than competitive. Madeline opened the folder. Her eyes flicked across the numbers, and for a second, her professional mask slipped. The salary was 40% higher than what she earned at Polaris. The offer included equity, platinum-tier benefits, and a signing bonus bigger than her yearly rent. This is generous, she said. We pay for excellence, I replied. The real question is, are you excellent enough to work under someone you called an embarrassment this morning? The words landed like a pin drop. She flushed, but didn't flinch. I was wrong, she said, voice steady. Clearly, I was very wrong about your situation. You were wrong about more than just my situation, I said. You misjudged my capacity, my resilience, my vision, and maybe even what success really looks like. She took a breath, considering. Then maybe I need to ask, what else I've been wrong about? You'd find out, I said, if you're brave enough. Madeline looked around the room again, then back at me. There was something different in her eyes now, less pride, more curiosity, more clarity. When would I start, she asked. Monday, if you accept. She extended her hand. I accept. We shook. Her grip, this time, was firm, present, real. Welcome to Luminate AI, Madeline. I think, she said, smiling for the first time, this will be an educational experience. For both of us. As the panel dispersed and Madeline stepped out to complete onboarding, Eli lingered in the room, eyes still on me. That was either the most professional handling of family drama I've ever witnessed, Eli said, lingering near the door, or you're quietly executing the longest revenge plan in corporate history. I gathered my notes, half smiling. Maybe it's neither. He raised a brow. Maybe it's just two sisters, I said, finally seeing each other clearly. If she can't handle working for someone she once underestimated, then she'll learn something important about herself. And if she can, he asked. I glanced toward the windows, where the Luminate AI logo gleamed at the top of the skyline, visible for miles across Chicago. If she can, I said softly, maybe we'll both learn something about what family can become. 3 months later, I stood in the same conference room, this time watching Madeline present her Q3 marketing analysis to the executive board. She spoke with quiet command, moving through slides of predictive trend curves, heat maps, and user emotion modeling. The behavioral response data shows a clear pattern, she explained. clicking through a dynamic visualization. Engagement rates shift based on time of day, recent purchases, even hyperlocal weather fluctuations. Naomi leaned forward. Recommendations? We should launch adaptive messaging that responds not just to demographics, but to real-time context. I've built a pilot program, estimated engagement lift between 15 and 20%. The room stirred with interest. It was sharp, original, very luminant. Outstanding, Terrence said as she rapped. Let's walk through your timeline next week. As the execs filtered out, Madeline stayed behind, gathering her laptop and notes. We hadn't spoken one-on-one since her first day. Our dynamic had stayed purely professional, intentional, maybe necessary. Strong presentation, I said, snapping my MacBook closed. Thanks, she replied, not looking up. I've learned a lot, especially about how tech and psychology actually intersect. Learned from whom? I asked, echoing my own question from that first interview. She met my eyes immediately this time. From the smartest CEO I've ever worked with, she said, who also happens to be my sister. There was no bitterness in her tone, only sincerity. For the first time in years, I saw something new in her expression. Respect. Madeline? I asked gently. Can I ask? What changed? She paused. I stopped chasing someone else's version of success and started paying attention to what actual achievement looks like. She smiled faintly. Turns out, I was working for it all along. But more than that, Madeline continued, her voice softer now. I realized I was so focused on protecting my own image, I never stopped to actually see you. She glanced around the conference room, taking in the skyline view, the innovation boards, the global client dashboard on the far wall. Once I finally started paying attention, she said, I realized I'd been a fool. You weren't a fool, I replied gently, just working with incomplete information. Incomplete because I didn't bother to look, she admitted. I was too arrogant to consider that I might be wrong. We walked together toward the elevator, our footsteps echoing in calm unison across the polished concrete floor. Just before the doors arrived, she spoke again. There's something else, Ava. I've been meaning to thank you. For what? For Ethan's school tuition. I know it was you. I kept my expression flat. I don't know what you're talking about. She gave a knowing look. I'm your assistant now. I process your expense reports. Her voice dropped slightly. Phoenix Academy, tuition payments. Thomas Ethan Carter, my son. The elevator arrived. We stepped inside. In the quiet, reflective space, the conversation shifted. How long have you known? I asked. About the tuition, 2 weeks. About everything else? Around a month. Everything else. Dad's oncology bills. Mom's car repair fund. The anonymous gift that saved the Westside Art Center. The one we volunteered at in college. I pressed the button for the executive floor, considering my response. Why didn't you say anything? I didn't know how, she said. I needed to figure out how to apologize for 5 years of being so incredibly wrong about you. The elevator opened, but we didn't move. You don't need to apologize for missing facts, I said quietly. You need to apologize for never trying to find them. She nodded. You're right. I am sorry. For more than this morning. For every time I dismissed you, judged you, treated you like you were less. I stepped out, then turned to face her. Apology accepted. But let's be clear. Going forward, I'm not just your sister. I'm your boss, and I expect excellence. She smiled, truly freely, for the first time in years. I wouldn't expect anything less. After all, I'm learning from the best. As the elevator closed, I stood there thinking. 3 months ago, she called me a failure. Today, she called me her teacher. But more than anything, today she'd finally seen me, not as the dropout, not as the family outlier, but as a woman who had built something real. Something powerful. Something entirely on her own terms. My phone buzzed, a message from Madeline. Dinner Sunday? My treat. I want to hear the whole story. How you built all this. I texted back. Your treat? On an assistant salary? Her reply came quickly. Fine. Your treat. But I'm picking the wine. Even I can afford that now. 6 months after that first interview, Luminate AI unveiled our most ambitious project to date, PulseMap, a real-time behavioral prediction platform designed to revolutionize digital engagement. The launch event took place at our headquarters in downtown Chicago, with Madeline standing beside me, on stage as the platform's co-developer. Watching her take questions from national reporters and analysts, I couldn't help but marvel at the evolution. The sister who once rolled her eyes at startup nonsense now spoke with confidence about adaptive algorithms and emotional data mapping. The breakthrough, she told a journalist from Marketing Weekly, was realizing behavior isn't just shaped by who people are, but by when they are, emotionally, contextually, moment to moment. After the conference, our parents showed up in the lobby, clearly overwhelmed by the buzz around their daughters. "We saw the press release," Mom said, pulling us both into a hug. "Though honestly, we don't fully understand what you've built here." "What we've built," Madeline corrected with a smile. "Ava did the heavy lifting. I just came around late to the vision." Dad looked around at the open workspaces, the massive live data screens, the teams buzzing with creative energy. "This is really yours?" he asked. "This is really mine," I said simply. "And Madeline works for you?" "She works with me," I clarified. "She's now our Vice President of Strategic Innovation." Madeline beamed. "Best professional decision I've ever made, showing up for that interview." As we walked them through the office, past brainstorming rooms and testing labs, I felt a shift. Not just between Madeline and me, but in how our parents saw us. Both of us. "You know," Mom said quietly, "I think we owe you both an apology. We always assumed Madeline was the successful one, and Ava, well, was trying." She looked at me. "We never stopped to ask what either of you were really doing." "Success," I said, "comes in more than one form. Took all of us a while to see that." That evening, as Madeline and I worked late in the glass-walled strategy suite overlooking the Chicago skyline, she looked up from her screen, a thoughtful expression on her face. "Can I tell you something?" she asked. "Always." This morning, during the press conference, when I was talking about reimagining the relationship between tech and human psychology, I realized I wasn't just talking about marketing. I tilted my head. "What were you talking about?" "Us," she said simply. "You and me." I set my tablet down, listening. "We spent years running off bad data," she continued, "making snap judgments based on surface-level inputs, never questioning our assumptions, never digging deeper." I nodded slowly. "And now? Now I get it. The sister I thought was lost wasn't lost at all. She was busy building something extraordinary. And the sister you thought was rigid and self-absorbed? Well, maybe she just needed the right environment to grow." I smiled and closed my laptop. "So, what's our next hypothesis to test?" Madeline grinned. "Whether two sisters who finally understand each other can build something even more powerful together than either could alone." I liked that hypothesis. "Want to start testing it tomorrow?" I slung my bag over my shoulder. "I think we already started 6 months ago." "And the early results?" she asked. I laughed, looking promising. We stepped into the elevator together, descending past floors full of engineers, analysts, and teams still buzzing with energy. Outside, we walked beneath the Luminate AI sign glowing above the lobby entrance, our beacon of transformation and innovation. Madeline had been right about one thing that day she interviewed. It really had been the most important meeting of her life. Not because it changed her title, but because it challenged everything she thought she knew. About success, about failure, about family. And for me, it had been the most meaningful hiring decision I'd ever made. Not just because she was qualified, but because she had finally been given the chance to see who I really was. No arguments, no lectures, just results. As we reached our cars and looked out over the lights of the city we now shaped together, I felt something settle, something peaceful. Tomorrow would bring more challenges, but tonight, the so-called family disappointment had become the one rewriting the story. Uns visques, sumi, with her sister finally beside her. If you've made it to this point, thank you for listening to more than just my story, but the lessons that shaped it. I used to think the only way to prove myself was to work in silence and let the results speak for me. But I've learned that true strength doesn't just come from building something great. It comes from being willing to be seen, fully, even by those who once dismissed you. So if this story meant something to you, leave a comment. Tell me what moment resonated. Tell me about a time you were underestimated and how you rose anyway. Because I know I'm not alone. And if you're still figuring it all out, here's my advice. Don't waste your life trying to meet someone else's definition of success. Define it for yourself. Chase what sets your soul on fire, even if no one else understands it yet. Even if they laugh. One day, they won't. Support this journey by subscribing, not just for me, but for every woman who's been called an embarrassment, a failure, a dreamer. Because one day, that dreamer might just be someone's boss. And if you're already there, help lift someone else. We rise better together.